Hello and welcome to this instalment of Text Talk. In my last video, I explored FBI Zodiac serial number 139, which focused on fingerprint evidence and the interactions between the SFPD and the FBI identification labs in 1970. In this video, we are going to leap forward 21 years to 1991. In January of this year, the Leigh Police Department made a request of the FBI to check the Zodiac latent prints they held on file against two suspects, Arthur Lee Allen and Lawrence Kane. They also asked the FBI to send copies of photographs of the latent prints in that file so they could initiate searches through the Department of Justice automated systems. At this time, the FBI recognised that the A10042 Zodiac file had not been encoded and searched through their existing automated systems, so a request was made to the FBI Identification Lab to perform this search. This request was allocated FBI serial number 232 in January 1991, and the datasheets spawned by this request will be the main focus of today's video. There's a fair bit of technical jargon to sort of unpack here, and I'll try my best to narrate the details, but if anything is confusing or requires further explanation, please feel free to drop a question in the comments section below. I've tried my best to be accurate with the information and to articulate it clearly, but of course I'm human and make mistakes, so again please feel free to point out any inaccuracies in the comments section below and I can address those as well. So yeah, let's get into this.
There are 2 pages that make up serial 232. Some of the relevant dates are missing from the files, but we can determine the approximate date of the report based off date stamps and previous files. I'll transcribe the relevant text from this request, as it is fairly self-explanatory. Subject: Zodiac extortion. Ray, Sacramento teletype to the director dated sometime between 14th and 23rd January. Request to the Identification Division Latent Fingerprint Section. The Latent Fingerprint Section is requested to provide Sacramento with photographs of all latent fingerprints developed during the Zodiac investigation, latent case number A-10042. The Latent Fingerprint Section is further requested to search the latent prints developed in the Zodiac case through the Automated Identification System and the Automated Latent Systems Model and National Unidentified Latent File. Sacramento is not aware of the requested search as previously being conducted. The photographs of latent prints on file with the Identification Division are being sought at the request of the Vallejo, California Police Department, who intends to run the prints and search through the California Department of Justice Automated Latent Print Systems. Sacramento appreciates the Latent Fingerprint Section's prompt response to the comparison requested in referenced teletype. As per the request, the FBI's Identification Division encoded all latent prints in their Zodiac file that were suitable for automated searching. This data, along with other search parameters, was included for each print on a series of documents called ALSA3 sheets. Automated Latent Search of the Automated Identification System, Phase 3. ALSA3 is a computer-assisted means of identifying an individual as the perpetrator of a crime by his fingerprints found on evidence. Fingerprint experts initiate searches on the computer by entering the intricate detail of the crime scene fingerprint, the fingerprint classification, and the fingerprint position, such as left index finger, right ring finger, etc. Other information, such as the description of the suspect, a geographic region, and crime category, can be used as part of the search criteria. All of this information is then searched against the automated database of over 23 million individuals' fingerprint records. The computer selects the appropriate individuals based on the search criteria and matches their fingerprints with that of the crime scene fingerprints. The fingerprint expert then compares the top candidates selected by the computer to determine if an identification is made or not. I'll now cover the different fields noted on the sheets and what their functionality is. The name is simply the name of the technician doing the encoding. Date is when the data for that sheet was completed. FGR stands for finger, represented by a number between 1 and 10, denoting which specific finger on which specific hand. PRT is an alphabetic character representing each separate individual print, A, B, C, and so on. We use the FGR and PRT data to identify individual prints in these files. For example, the first print, A3, is a right middle fingerprint. The second, B4, is a right ring fingerprint. FPCL and FPCH represent specific coding data for the print itself and will vary depending on the overall primary classification. There are 3 general primary fingerprint types: arches, loops, and whorls. Arches only occur 5% of the time in any given finger, and we have none in the FBI's Zodiac file. We only have loops and whorls. Loops are represented in these fields as numeric characters, with FPCL the low range ceiling and FPCH the high range ceiling for specific identification data points. I'll explain this in more detail later. Whorls are represented by alphabetic code data. I will also elaborate on this later. Sex, race, and location are all self-explanatory. The search will include white males on file in the California FBI depository. Age. The age range included in this search is 40 to 75. In some cases, these age ranges are compacted into smaller blocks. I'm not sure exactly why, but it's arbitrary to us either way. The age number is the age of the suspect in 1991. This means the computer will be pulling up suspects born between 1916 and 1951. This covers suspects that would have been between the ages of 18 and 53 in 1969. So, using this sheet as an example, when the technician inputs this data into the computer, it will search the California indices for a white male between the ages of 40 to 75 in 1991, who has loops on their right middle and little fingers, and plain whorls with inner to outer tracings on their right ring fingers. Oh, and by the way, multiple fingerprints on the same sheet like this means the technicians can be sure the prints came from fingers on the same hand. There are some examples of this knowledge being articulated, with the Hamlet letter being a foremost example. Some of the sources can be determined using the information we have and applying logic and common sense. Others are more ambiguous, and some we can take educated guesses on, but without complete certainty. Looking at crossed out data on the sheets, it appears they decided in the end to only submit queries for either the right or left hand and not both together. This crossed out data does, however, allow us to recognise which left-hand prints originated on the little list letter, as we can be fairly certain that prints A, B and C are from that source, based off the information at hand. We are now going to explore the coding data itself. This can get a little heavy and difficult to pick up, but bear with me. The coding data for each individual print is important because we can establish a number of things by understanding its relevance and functionality. Firstly, a very quick and very basic fingerprint classification lesson. Fingerprints come into three broad primary classification categories: arches, which occur 5% on any given finger, loops, which occur 65%, and whorls, which occur 30% of the time. Each of these classifications are noted a specific way on ALSA3 sheets. There are no arches present in the 21 latent prints on file, which is no surprise given the 5% odds of occurring. This leaves us with loops, of which we have 11, and whorls, of which we have 10. So loops and whorls make up roughly 50% each of the prints on file. But according to the statistics, loops occur twice as often as whorls, right? Yes, and there is a very logical explanation for the apparent disproportionate number of whorls present in the A-10042 file, which I will explain in more detail later. Loops are designated by numeric characters. These values will contain a range, which is applied to the identification data chart, listing the relevant points of comparison required. Let's use print A3 as an example. It has a low point of 11 and a high point of 20, meaning the computer will be asked to bring up minutiae sections of a suspect's fingerprints in that specific range. The more points of comparison, the better quality the print. There are a fairly wide range of values in the ALSA3 sheets, but most prints on file contain between around 10 to 20 points of comparison. Whorls are designated by an alphabetical code, denoting both the type and the pattern type of the whorl. Unlike with the loop coding data, we can physically include or exclude fingers of similar position based off this data, which we will be looking at closely very soon. While we can't really determine print synergy between the loops, specific data given for the whorls allows us to use some statistical probability for occurrence rates. Some of the probabilities can be accentuated by observations made by the lab technicians also. Whorls have an approximate 30% chance to occur on any given male finger. There are four types of whorls: plain whorls, double loop whorls, central pocket loop whorls, and accidental whorls. Of these four types, the plain whorl is easily the most common type, making up 25% of that 30% total, with the other three being relatively rare types, making up the other 5%. The plain whorl classification can be narrowed down even further. There are two different types of coding data for the plain whorls: PIPO, which means plain whorl inner tracing to outer tracing, and PMPO, which means plain whorl meeting tracing to outer tracing. According to the research I did, the inner tracing to outer tracing classification, PIPO, will occur 60% of the time, while PMPO meeting tracing to outer tracing will occur 40% of the time. Now, let's apply some statistical probabilities to actual latent fingerprints with coding data. We will begin by looking at the fingerprint specifically mentioned by Billy Hamlet in serial 139, the left ring finger from the little list letter, print I9. The coding data for this latent print is PIPO, which, as we have just demonstrated, stands for plain whorl with inner tracing to outer tracing. We know that there is a 30% chance of a whorl occurring on any given finger, 25% of that figure made up by plain whorls, 60% of that 25% is made up of the plain whorl with inner tracing to outer tracing. This leaves us with the statistical probability of this specific classification to appear on any given male finger as 15%, or around about 1 in 7 people. Now, let's examine the only other left ring finger in the FBI's Zodiac file. This print, Q9, also has coding data of PI-PO. Now, if there is a 15% chance of this occurring on this finger, and a 15% chance of this designation appearing on the little list letter latent, then what is the statistical probability that these two prints belong to two different people? 2.25%. That's right, folks. There is a 97.75% probability that these two prints were left by the same finger. And let us also keep in mind what Billy Hamlet specifically contacted the FBI's Identification Division about. His observations were regarding the minuti, so that is a level deeper than the classification we are looking at. So the 97.75% probability looks even better than it actually is. Using the exact same statistical probability on prints B4 and U4 allows us to determine that there is a 97.75% chance that print U4 is also from the same finger that contributed the right ring fingerprint found on the little list letter. The interesting thing about this is that print U4 is listed on a multiple print sheet along with print O2. I don't know the exact source of prints U4 and O2, but they could possibly be from the Steincab. If the statistical probabilities are spot on, this could mean we also have primary classification data for the perp's right index finger. The coding is DMDO. This is a double loop whirl with meeting tracing to outer tracing, a very rare classification occurring in only about 1% or less of fingers. So, if we were to include all of the little list letter latents, and those other latents which share whirl data strongly suggesting a common contributor, we can eliminate non-similar whirl classifications, and for the sake of simplification, we will remove all loops of unknown origin. This leaves us with the following latent fingerprints. Based off all of the information and research I've done, I am prepared to put my testicles on the table at this point and suggest categorically that the right suspect will most likely carry these same classifications on the corresponding fingers. My personal belief, based off the information we have, is that there could be no less than 11, possibly 12, latent prints on file in the FBI's Zodiac file that belong to the perpetrator. Most of the others are probably not his, but I can't rule out any of the loops on matching fingers as being from the same person. Consequently, I can't rule any of them in based off the information either, so the possibilities remain open. I would conclude that print Q9, the left ring finger latent with identical coding data to print I9, is the print SFPD technician Billy Hamlet noted a similarity with in July 1970, and is from the Steincab door. I would also conclude that prints U4 and O2 are from the Steincab, an established Zodiac crime scene where multiple fingerprints were found, and where print U4 carries coding data that is statistically aligned with print B4 from the little list letter. Fellow researcher and friend Craggle suggests that the 4 prints listed on sheet 6 are from Riverside PD, specifically Sherry Joe Bates's vehicle. This seems like a logical deduction to me, based off the paperwork and nature of the evidence. Also note the coding data on these prints is not similar to that of the little list letter latents, with 3 fingers having the classification data of PMPO. There is only a 10% chance of this designation appearing on any given finger, making this set of prints a statistical anomaly. If the killer of Sherry Joe Bates did leave these prints, it would not be difficult to narrow a suspect down from them. This can also help to explain the disproportionate amount of whorls in these files. That's Serial 232 and the ALSA3 sheets. If anybody has any questions, corrections or additions, please feel free to drop a comment below. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope this video has been informative and interesting. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next Text Talk.